balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Episode number 156. Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. I am your host, Lori Jill Eisenstadt, IBCLC. I don't know about any of you, but it's been a crazy busy week for me. In the last 2 weeks, I have released 2 shows that have been listened to by many people, and you are sharing the show like crazy. 2 weeks ago, we heard from Sarah Fletcher, who is a surrogate mom. And this week, we listened to Aditi Singh talk about leaving her country, coming to the United States, and how she writes about the everyday life of raising her 2 children here in America. All you need to do is go to iTunes or Stitcher, subscribe to the show, and you can listen to all of the back shows, including those last 2. I just love when you turn other people onto the show and they share it with their friends. That is exactly how goodness is spread. I started podcasting because I wanted the world to know more about breastfeeding. I really wanted to educate and build mothers' confidence in their ability to breastfeed. It's working, and I could not be more pleased. Hearing from individual moms always makes my heart sing. Here are just some of the few posts that I have received inside our Facebook group, All About Breastfeeding Community. You can find it on Facebook. Here are a few posts that I've gotten these last few weeks. From Claire, she said, "Thanks, Lori. I listen to your podcast on a weekly basis and feel like I'm already more prepared for my breastfeeding journey with number 2. Number 1 didn't go as planned and ended way before I liked." Claire, I'm so thrilled that you're here. There is tons of information in the site, and if you go through the back shows, there's on so many different subjects, and there's a lot that you're going to want to go through with regards to preparing, and especially the first 2 weeks. This is where moms have the greatest struggles, and I've done a lot of shows on exactly that, what you should expect the first couple of weeks, what common problems are, and how to prevent them. I'm glad you're here with us in the community, and we're all thrilled to have you. Dana said that she's returning to work full-time in 2 weeks, and she was looking for tips and found this amazing podcast and then this group. She's grateful for the calm explanations from me. She said sometimes lactation at her baby's doctor's office can be a little intimidating. I follow a whole bunch of other sites, and some are a bit militant for my style, but I love info of all kinds. Dana, I am so glad that you said that, because the last thing I want to ever be known for is being militant. I do my absolute best to be a strong support person, highly encouraging, but also to have balance and meet moms where they're at and get from you what it is that you're looking to get out of your breastfeeding relationship with your baby and help you meet those goals. I don't think it does anybody any good to be so militant about breastfeeding. Thank you. Sarah said, "Hello, wonderful mamas." She's a mother to 1 boy who's a little over 2, and they just weaned at the end of February. She said it was rough, but it went much better than she expected. She's looking forward to having another baby in the near future, but right now she's currently working part-time as a postpartum doula. I worked at a postpartum doula for quite a few years, Sarah, and I absolutely loved it. She's also a trained breastfeeding educator, and she continues to learn so much from this show. She said, "Your philosophies really resonate with me, and I'm so appreciative that you have this show. Wish I had found out when I was pregnant about this show. Sarah, I'm thrilled that you're here, and I have actually a lot of breastfeeding educators and students and IBCLCs listening to the show, and we are all learning together. Thank you so much. These are just a few of the posts inside the group. You can join us by going to Facebook and All About Breastfeeding community, and feel free to jump into the conversations. New mothers, sometimes we just feel alone, and it's nice to know there are other moms out there who are enjoying breastfeeding their babies. Many moms tell me their favorite thing to do is to listen to the show while they're breastfeeding their baby. Now, how cool is that? It is also nice to be able to learn from other mothers who have had struggles and how they work through them. That's another reason I love doing the show, interviewing moms who talk about their breastfeeding journeys. Speaking of struggles, in today's FAQ session, we are going to talk about nursing strikes. I'm first going to describe to you what a nursing strike is, why babies sometimes go on a nursing strike, why this happens, and then we're going to talk about ways to bring a baby back to the breast. A nursing strike happens when a baby who has been breastfeeding for weeks or for months suddenly refuses to breastfeed. You can only imagine how devastating this can be for the mom. It's confusing, and mothers usually take it as a personal rejection. They keep offering the breast, and their baby just keeps turning it down. I find that most mothers tend to respond by verbalizing that their baby doesn't like them anymore. This makes them feel rejected, and this can be quite hurtful to the mother. Or they think there's something gone wrong with their milk. This abrupt refusal usually has causes other than a direct rejection of the mother. There are some very common reasons why this happens and fairly quick and easy ways to bring a baby back to nursing. Other times the strike goes beyond 2 days, and moms can benefit from seeking professional help with an IBCLC to try to end the nursing strike. Sometimes we just cannot figure out why it happened in the first place, but we're just glad that the baby went back to the breast. Less common is the baby who never goes back to the breast. And this is a heartache for the mom who is far from ready to wean her baby. I'm going to go through a list of reasons babies do go on a nursing strike. I will begin with the most common reasons and end with the least common reasons. Sometimes babies, they're teething and they bite their mom's nipple. And the mother, of course, in response to it, usually screeches in pain and jumps out of her seat. It just comes on so suddenly, and that's just her response. And this kind of shocks the baby, and they make the association and stop nursing. That is probably the most common reason a baby goes on a nursing strike. Sometimes babies become ill, and if they're congested and have a stuffy nose, they find it difficult to nurse properly. When they breastfeed, they need to have a good seal around the breast tissue. When they try and do this, it prevents them from breathing easily. So they tend to pop on and off the breast numerous times. This sometimes causes them to go on strike. Or mom's response to their baby coming on and off causes a strike. What some moms will do is they really want to keep their baby suckling. So they just hold their baby in nice and close, not letting them come off so easily, pushing them to go right back on. All these behaviors on mothers' parts is a fairly normal response, which is why I know about it, because this is what happens very frequently and moms talk about it. And I assure that when they feel like, oh, did I do something to cause it? I didn't realize I shouldn't have done that. And then mothers feel bad. And then I just have a nice talk with them and say, you know what? It's actually quite common. That's most mothers' typical response. So you're not any different than the next person. But this is why babies do start refusing the breast, because of that constant pushing their baby back on and off. You're like, come on, you need to feed. But, however, as far as your baby is concerned, they're just not ready to stay at the breast. The more you keep bringing them back to the breast and they keep pushing away, the more likely they are to go on a nursing strike. Besides a stuffy nose, the other most common illness is an ear infection. And interestingly enough, the more the baby suckles at the breast when they have an ear infection, the more their ear hurts them. So you can see why they instinctively reject the breast by starting because they're hungry and thirsty, but then they stop because it's hurting them, and then after a while they just begin to refuse the breast. It's basically a protective mechanism on their part, and moms, again, their reaction is just by keep bringing their baby back to the breast. It's like, come on, babe, you want a nurse, I know you're not done, come on, let's go back to the breast. After a while, the baby does this out and out refusal, and moms are left to try and figure out why this is happening. When babies are breastfeeding, their bodies tend to be in a relaxed state, and it's common for babies to pee and poop while breastfeeding. I've seen a few babies that have had a urinary tract infection, and my guess is that they're peeing while they're breastfeeding. This causes them a burning sensation, and they start to avoid feeding if they're old enough to make that association. When babies have some kind of owie in their mouth, they will also avoid breastfeeding. It's like they're hungry and they're thirsty, they want it, but then when the breast goes in their mouth, it's hurting them. Some common reasons for this are thrush, which is an oral yeast infection, and it can be quite painful for a baby. It's like they're hungry, but when they go to breastfeed, it hurts them a lot. Some babies have had thrush, and their moms have used a great product called gentian violet to treat the thrush. Some babies are more sensitive to the gentian violet, and some moms have used a percentage of the gentian violet that's too strong, and sometimes it irritates their baby's mouth, the mucous membranes, and sometimes it burns the skin inside the baby's mouth, causing painful breastfeeding. Babies that were never really breastfeeding well from the beginning, they sometimes reach a point where they cannot cheat at the breast anymore or get what they need at the breast anymore. They sometimes go through what seems like a nursing strike, but I feel that they were never really breastfeeding so great to begin with. When I work closely with some moms and I figure out what the primary feeding issue is, which was something going on with position and latch, we fix that and the baby usually easily comes back to breastfeeding. There's also a virus called the Coxsackie virus, which, along with the fever and aches and no interest in eating, also causes mouth sores. I remember the first time I saw this in an infant. When the mother came in for an appointment because her baby was not breastfeeding for 2 whole days, I saw her on the 3rd day. I was actually quite shocked when I saw the mom because I could tell her baby looked flush, and when touching the baby, I could tell her baby had a fever. I couldn't figure out why she brought her baby in for a lactation appointment when they really needed to go to the doctor. I immediately told her that we could figure out why her baby was refusing to nurse later on. However, her baby was pretty hot, and she should call her pediatrician right away. This one particular mom told me that her 7-month-old baby had a fever twice before, but had never stopped eating. So she did not think one thing had anything to do with the other. She felt like if she could just get her baby to nurse, she could keep her baby's energy up and hydrated, just like she had done with other fevers, and in a few days her baby would be much better. But not this time. So now at this point, she was worried. And she had also been doing some Googling, and she read about nursing strikes and thought perhaps that's what's going on. I decided to sit with her for a few minutes and ask her some questions, but if I could not get to the bottom of it, she would need to go to her pediatrician right away. What I actually decided to do, in second thought, I said, you know what? Let's have you call your pediatrician and see if you can get in and make an appointment, which she did. Beyond looking flushed and feeling warm, her baby Joshua did not have visible signs of dehydration, and the mom Jackie said that his pee diapers were hardly anything at night, but she was definitely changing quite a few during the day. I wanted a physician to evaluate Joshua as this was outside the scope of my practice. She called, she made the appointment, and we now had about 45 minutes until she needed to leave for her appointment. So after asking her a few questions, looking inside the baby's mouth, checking for thrush, and looking at mom's nipples, I looked inside baby's mouth really well, and I was quite surprised to see about 5 bumps that were the size of little eraser heads. Her baby definitely did not want me poking around in his mouth, and he had that cry that told you it was painful when I touched the bumps. And yes, I did have gloves on, which is standard practice for me. So the next thing I did was have her breastfeed so I could observe what was happening at the breast. Jackie, the mom, was pretty tenacious as she put him to the breast and he took a few sips and then pushed away. This happened 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, 12 times. Each time he came to the breast, I could see that he was transferring milk, just not a lot at one time. When I asked Jackie if this has been going on over the last few days, she said, yes, this is what's been happening. Every time he pushed off, she was quite firm in pushing him back on again because she knew he needed to eat. I suspected that Joshua was not feeling well, and the sores in his mouth prevented him from staying longer than a few minutes at a time. This prompted Jackie to keep bringing him back to the breast many times as she knew he needed to eat. But the combination of the sores in his mouth, along with being pushed and pushed back onto the breast, this is what probably caused the nursing strike. So the next thing I did was I put her on a plan to keep her supply up and ensure her baby was kept hydrated. I said to her that she should always try at the breast first, but once she could see that he was no longer going to breastfeed, rather than bringing him on and off, she should just let him be and keep him next to her skin and hand express, and perhaps Joshua would be willing to lap up the milk as it dribbled down. I've seen this happen many times. And since Joshua was 7 months old, rather than start giving him milk in a bottle, which she had not had, I suggested maybe he would take some fluid from a cup. If this did not work, she would try cup feeding or spoon feeding. When I said a cup before, I meant something like a sippy cup. But if he won't take that, then I thought a small little cup or spoon feed him, just to keep him hydrated. I imagined that he would take small volumes frequently. Her job was to keep him hydrated, and as he began to feel better, he will likely return to his normal breastfeeding behavior as long as he was not pushed to do so. In a few follow-up phone calls to Jackie, that is how I found out that her baby did have the Coxsackie virus. I didn't know it at the time, but she told me that afterwards. And it took him about 24, 28 hours or so. She said that squeezing out milk and letting him lap it up as it dripped down her chest, that helped. He wasn't too thrilled with the sippy cup, but he did lap up the milk by spoon. And she was just very vigilant over the next 12, 24 hours or so. He started feeling better, and he eventually went back to breastfeeding. Probably took him about 4 or 5 days until he was breastfeeding well. So some babies, they're sick, they have something going on inside their mouth, and that can cause a nursing strike. Less likely, however, when all was said and done, there have been some cases where I just might not know for sure, but I think that the baby was not liking the taste of a product that mom was using on her nipples. In each case, the refusal happened after the mother started using something they had not used before. In one case, it was very clear to me. This mom had been nursing her baby for the first few weeks, and yet it had been painful for her, and she was cracked and bleeding in her nipples. She started using coconut oil, olive oil, and Lansino, different things at different times of the day, because that's what was suggested to her. I had not seen her before that time, but it was suggested to her to help soothe her nipples. So that's at the point when she called me. She said, well, it wasn't going so great before. I was in a lot of pain. I was cracked and bleeding, and now my baby is totally refusing. So I had an appointment with her. I came to her home. I asked her a lot of questions, and long story short, that's the conclusion that I came to. She stopped using those for the next, I just said, for the next 8 hours, just don't use anything and let's see what happens. And her baby happily went back to the breast. Then I was able to work with her with healing her nipples, checking position and latch and all that. And it wound up working out fine with her. But I'll never know for sure, but I have a pretty good feeling she was putting all these products on her nipples and her baby was rejecting the products, not necessarily the mom. There have been other times when the reasons have been either too little volume or too much volume. The babies also were seemingly happy to go to the breast in the very early days, but then suddenly rejected the breast. Sometimes babies reject the breast. They go on a strike for a known or unknown reason. Because babies need to eat, moms offer milk from a bottle. Then the baby takes the bottle and then begins to show a very strong preference to the bottle. When the milk is too little, I don't feel like it's, especially listening to the moms talk, they say their baby went on a nursing strike, just refused out of nowhere. But in talking to them, I find out that their baby had been nursing just less and less and less. And there came a point where her supply was so low, her baby was just very frustrated at the breast. And that's different than a nursing strike. There are times when I jokingly say that I need to be an investigative reporter, asking hundreds of questions, just trying my best to get to the bottom of this puzzle. In the very early days of breastfeeding, babies, they may be okay to breastfeed even if they're not getting enough food. But as the days go on, they get older and they want more and more volume and are not getting it. They become fussier and fussier. I find that in talking to moms, the babies did not all of a sudden, just one feeding, just stop just like that. However, in hindsight, it was a gradual distancing of the breast over a few days. But then I get these crisis calls with moms saying, my baby is rejecting the breast. It's like night and day, and now he won't take it anymore. And like I said, we get into a conversation. I meet with them, and lots of times it turns out that all the signs were there. Her baby was rejecting gradually. And then one day, it's just like, no more. When babies refuse the breasts, most mothers are determined to get their babies to feed. First of all, they just know their babies need to eat. And second of all, when I'm saying they're pushing their babies onto the breast and like, come on, baby, you need to eat. Because the other thing that happens after a few missed breastfeeds, for some moms, their breasts get slightly sore, somewhat overfilled, but some get painful and quite engorged. And it becomes a situation where mom is like, hey, babe, come on, you need to eat now. I need some relief now. In my whole career as an IBCLC, I have come to the conclusion that in two separate situations, when it appeared the baby went on a strike, but it really happened because of the extreme stress that their mom was under and the milk flow just wasn't happening. In both cases, the moms had suffered a major life event that was stressful enough to just stop their milk from flowing. It just stopped. It's not like they did not have the milk, but they just could not let down. In both of these cases, the babies were older than 6 months. They were very aware of their surroundings, very much in touch with their moms, and definitely knew what to do with the breast. However, try as they might, they just could not get the milk to come. After a few feedings like this, and their moms pushing them on and off the breast, they then began to refuse the breast. I will never forget this one particular case. It was over 13 years ago, and I still remember the details. And as I tell you this story, I still can remember. Well, I can't remember what the baby looked like, but I can absolutely remember what the mom looked like. And I could also remember her husband, even though I only saw him for a very short period of time. I saw moms at that time by scheduled appointments. This particular mom, she just walked into the clinic that I was working at. She was clearly distraught, and my staff knocked on my door and asked if I could possibly see this mom now. And it's not something that they usually do. So I stood up and invited the mom into my office, and we started talking. I had never met this mom before. She had apparently been trying to get her baby to breastfeed since the night before. She said it had been 15 hours since her baby's last feeding. She said he would latch on, but immediately just start to scream after a minute or so of sucking. This mother was so distraught, even more so than other moms I had seen and worked with when their babies had a nursing strike. She had a baby that appeared well fed, a chunky monkey, and she said that she had always exclusively breastfed. But I thought to myself, okay, Lori, this mom really wears her heart on her sleeve. And it's just that she must be much more emotional about this than other moms I have worked with. I've definitely seen moms who were really upset with the nursing strike, but there was something in particular about this mom where it was just way over and above. And I was not being judgmental. I just could not really figure it out. So I sat her down in my office, and a few minutes into the consult, after I just started talking to her, there was a knock on the door, and it was her husband. He came in and said to her, come on, we have to leave now. I didn't know what to say in the moment, but as she started to pack up her stuff, I said, are you sure we don't have just a few more minutes, as I would really like to help you figure this out? Then the bombshell came. Her husband raised his voice to me and said they had to leave now. Otherwise, they would be getting to LA so late. I'm thinking, this baby hasn't breastfed. This mother is so distraught. I looked at the mom and I said, LA? You going to LA? And she said to me, her twin brother had been killed in a shooting, and she was rushing to get there to be with the rest of the family. Oh boy, this poor mom. So to me, her extreme demeanor started to make a lot more sense. I surmised that her body had suffered an enormous shock, and its response was to go into lockdown mode to deal with the shock. She left with her husband. She never returned my 2 follow-up phone calls, and I just let it go. I did wind up hearing from her out of the blue, literally about 10 years after that, and 3 kids later. She was shopping in the breastfeeding store that I worked at. She recognized me, introduced herself, and started to tell me her story. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember you. Right before her husband walked in, she had just taken out her breast and was just about to latch her baby on, and I could see that her breast was really, really overly full. So I remembered her. She did tell me that she got to LA that night, and what happened was her parents took care of the baby while she and her husband slept for a few hours. And when she woke up and she went to breastfeed, her baby breastfed, and she never had a problem since. I believe her body was in shock mode. I do not have anything to document this case. However, I am sure her baby stopped breastfeeding because of frustration with her milk not letting down. And had I had an opportunity to work with her, we would have figured a few things out. We would have got her baby fed. In a few other cases, there were other traumas in the mom's life that I believe led to her inability to let down. I have a few of these in the last few years that I've worked. For instance, there was the mom who needed my help initially, and soon things were going beautifully with breastfeeding. She didn't need me anymore. But at 5 weeks old, this mom found out devastating news. Her father was diagnosed with cancer and told he had just a few weeks to live. Sadly, this mom with a new baby was so grief-stricken. I think her supply just literally dried up, and she never got back to nursing her son again. I did see her with baby number 2, and as far as I know, that baby nursed well for a few years until he self-weaned. I'm not sure of the exact age, but That was about a year or so ago that I had met her. When the supply is an issue, we work on ensuring that every time the baby's hungry, he gets a full feeding while mom works on building her supply. Grumpy, poorly fed babies commonly refuse to breast. You bump up the supply, you keep the baby well fed, and her baby is likely to get back to all breastfeeding. Too much milk, I find that working on reducing the supply, positioning changes so baby does not feel like he is getting waterboarded every feeding, that baby is also likely to get back to breastfeeding. Actually, both of these babies in both cases are pretty darn smart. In their own way, they can't use words, but by their carrying on at the breast, they're definitely telling their moms something is not right here. When the reasons are because a baby is ill, a care plan of keeping up the supply by removing the milk regularly, not forcing to feed the baby, but offer frequent small feedings, keeping baby well fed and hydrated. Once illness, fever, mouth sores, UTI, and other such things have passed, more than likely your baby will get back to breastfeeding. If the reason is a change of flavor at the breast, which definitely happens, once this is figured out and taken away, whether it is soap, perfume, some nipple cream, ointment, perhaps the mom is going through an extreme dieting or extreme detoxing. The flavor of the milk is almost like concentrated. And if it's very different than what the baby's been used to, some babies go on a nursing strike. But you change the behavior around, you take away the offending item, you have mom start eating properly again, and the baby usually comes back to the breast. Some of the most common ways that help end a nursing strike, if the situation calls for it, are to spend several days with your baby, attached to you as much as you can. I call this baby mooning. I ask you to just hunker down at home for a few days, separate yourself from the business of your life, and just spend all your time with your baby. Don't let outside life interfere with your baby moon. Lay with your baby, sleep with your baby, bathe with your baby, wear your baby. Spend lots of time skin to skin with your baby. Another tip, try to offer the breast at various times of the day and night, and not necessarily for quote-unquote feeding time. Try to offer at various sleep and awake phases of your baby. Sometimes your baby will begin feeding again after a good feeding while they were in a half sleep awake cycle. The biggest question you might have, do all nursing strikes reverse itself? Most of the time, yes. Some of the times, sadly, no. Sometimes we know why it happened, but help can come too late. And sometimes it's just one big mystery, and we never did figure out why. And the baby never went back to breastfeeding. Okay, well, you definitely just had a good lesson in nursing strikes. While I hope this is not something you ever have to deal with, if you have ever experienced a nursing strike, please make sure that you take the time to listen to your baby and take the time to work along with your baby. Try not to be too anxious or too pushy, as this will drive your baby further and further away from your breastfeeding. We have a few more FAQ days left of season 3, so I will see you next week. Bye-bye. Have you heard that Phoenix, Arizona is blessed with an amazing birthing center? Baby Moon Inn Birth Center is the best option for families who want access to midwifery care in and out of a hospital setting. You can experience birth in a comfortable home-like setting where natural birth is the focus. Laboring in water, being able to walk outside during labor and enjoy the beautiful garden. This is what birth can be like for you. There is so much more to learn about Baby Moon. The staff would love to have the opportunity to meet you and would like to extend an invitation for you to attend a free Choices in Childbirth class and a tour of the birth center. All you need to do is call 602-314-7755. That's 602-314-7755 and ask for the tour dates. You can also go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/podcast. And on the right-hand side of the page, you will see a link that will bring you to the calendar, and you can sign up for the tour yourself. When you come in for the tour, make sure that you tell them you found out about it from the All About Breastfeeding podcast, and you will be given a very lovely free gift.